the suction nipple on this little primer pump seems pretty solid. Hasn't broke off yet. So I think we'll put this back together. I'll maybe put a little bit of grease on that. Oops, don't forget the washer. So the plunger, the spring, this little, maybe it's a packing nut, if that's what you want to call it. And then this clip holds that all together. Yep, that's working. Okay. Then I believe this goes through here. Or do I have that backwards? I have it backwards. And that'll swivel a little. Then for the suction side, it had originally had a bit of a heavier hose, but I'm using this see-through gas line because I want to be able to sort of see what's going on when I first fire it up. Make sure I can see gas coming in. Can always change it later. This clamp might be might be a wee bit small. Yeah, it is. I think that was a 6 mil. I'll swap it out for a 7. Here's a bag of 7 mil. Ah, nice. Okay. I did have to heat this line up a little bit on the ends and sort of pushed it down over the edge of a tapered punch just to open it up a bit. I didn't have any 1/4 inch. I think this is, I don't know what it is. Anywho, there's not a lot of draw. You know, I think the gas will still flow just fine on the suction side. Look at the motor tilted up. This is that sort of drain nipple coming off the bottom of the carb, the bowl. That primer pump will pull the gas up into it, and then it'll feed the top of the carb through that little nipple. Thinking it would have been a lot easier just to have a choke plate on it, but you know, everybody does what they do. So this goes on. Oh, I also have to feed that little gas shutoff valve into place. See if I can't find the corresponding screws or bolts for this. There's a bag of them here somewhere. Not sure which bolts go where, so I'll just see which ones seem to fit. Can always change it out later once we get a little closer. Those ones seem to work. They'll hold it for now. And then this tube can come down around. Hopefully it'll slide over that nipple without too much trouble. I don't know if I'll have to shorten that or... Okay. Let's drop this down again. We've got a feed line for there. And this little puppy. Huh. Feed it up onto that nipple. That feels pretty solid. That's clipped. Okay, let's get the feed for the carburetor. Hopefully it'll slip on without too much issue. Clamped there, it's clamped there. The only thing I didn't do was take apart the fuel pump, but I think first we'll see if it runs, then go from there. Okay, this is keyed here. That slips on there. Pops back in there. So this can pull out. Okay, it's going to have to pull out in order to, this has to go on, and then this has to go on, and then a screw has to go in. Okay, good. Oh, I got to take these two screws back out because they go on, so it looks like there should be 4 similar screws. And it might not be those ones because they don't quite feel long enough. Perhaps it's these ones. Just move you to the side here while I figure this out. Pretty sure these top ones will be these weird coarse thread for going into plastic. That feels right. Okie doke. This is that idle jet. It should be closed. I don't know if there's a slot in the end of it or not. There isn't. And this pulls out. Dope. Hopefully I'll have enough room to I think I will, to get the little screw in. Yeah, this is kind of a convoluted carburetor setup compared to a lot simpler ones. There, the screws in. So gas off, gas on. Still have to figure this out and why it isn't. Whoops. Did I just break something? There we go. So that's closed. That needle valve or jet is all the way in. So half, one, half. That's supposedly the starting point for this. So I don't know what just gave there. Oh, maybe just seated properly into place. That's good. And nothing seems broken, so that's good. And now the trickiest one on this gas shutoff valve. It's one of these little spring pins or split pins that go in to sort of That's a little stopper. Oh, might have got it. So once that bottom prop gearbox is all once the epoxy sets, I'll put the leg together, and then we'll hook a little bit of gas up to this line, which in theory should fill the bowl. And once the bowl's full, then we can try this primer deal. Then we can give it a pull, see if it goes. So for you it'll be, 10 seconds. For me it'll be tomorrow sometime. Alrighty, see you in a bit. Okay, so it's been 24. The epoxy should have set nicely. And I was thinking again this morning that I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to put some more epoxy in here. Better too much than not enough. We'll clean this up. But I think what I'm going to do is, I've got some stainless steel, I think it's called mechanics wire, and I'm just going to make an array for each side. The idea being is that if this flexes at all and the solid metal sort of cracks or breaks away, I'm sort of thinking the epoxy and wire, maybe I'm overthinking this, but maybe the epoxy and the wire will allow a little bit of flexibility. Yeah, so I'll clean this up, bend up some wire, and then mix up some epoxy, and we'll stuff that together and let it set for another 24. We're just mixing up a fairly large amount of this stuff. Hopefully I guess I can always add to it if I need to. Yeah, it looks pretty consistent. I zoomed in a bit. Hopefully it focuses well. So I got a couple of sort of little wire arrays. And I built a little mold or backing so that it doesn't run down where the shifter lever goes. Get this nice and embedded. Good morning, Jasmine. How are you?
Very good.
I'll sort of use a small screwdriver to help hold everything in place. And any stuff that gets stuck on the lip, I'll just take a file afterwards and knock it off. File and a Dremel. It's hard to say if this broke from being dropped or if it's a sort of a work fatigue situation. Apparently the guy said it's been like that for a long time, but I did notice the bolt on this end was bent, and probably from, you know, the torque of the prop sort of causing it to go this way with the brake. It was bending the bolt. Oh, let me get you. It was bending the bolt here, one of the mounting bolts, so eventually that's probably gonna break. Yeah, this might just be a little added insurance. Okay, I'll let that set, then clean off the excess tomorrow, and then we can put it back together and see if it'll run. Hey, the power's out here at the house and garage, don't know why, so hopefully the ambient lighting is good enough. Going to take off all the excess. Yeah, I know, you're not supposed to run a file back and forth. Oh well. I'll carry on cleaning this up. I'm staying away from the mounting face of the water pump, the housing. So just gonna clean this up, knock some of these greblies off, and then we'll put it back together. So I filed off the heavy stuff, but little trick sort of to get things in plane. It's got some 100 grit. And it's sitting on a chunk of marble. Not putting too much pressure on it, just enough to take off the greblies. There's a little epoxy left where the two cracks were, which would make sense because when I glued it back together it may not have been exactly in plane. So I'll clean it up and we'll start putting it back together. Okay, assembly time. A little bit of grease inside there just to give it a start. And I'd taken some emery cloth, I put this in a drill, just in a hand drill, and some oil and an emery cloth, and just cleaned up where the seal sits there. Now without light you probably won't see a bunch here. I'm going to slip the thrust washer on, a little roller bearing. And then try to fit the gear on. Just got to find where it yeah. So there's the thrust washer, the roller bearing, and the gears on the spline. Maybe a smidge of grease just to get things started off right. Roller bearing, thrust washer, okay. Looking good so far. I think that's all the pieces for that. Drop of blue. This is that medium strength thread locker, so all you need is a little bit of force. Next, slip the pin in. It just engages the prop. Okay, I'll pop it in the vise and we'll put the water pump on. Okay, next is the plate. And a gasket. To help hold this little keeper in place, because that holds the water pump on the shaft. Looks like it's pointing out about there. There. That seats into place. Oh, lights just came back on. This is like a plastic or a nylon housing, so don't want to overdo it. Just nice and snug. And the gasket and the Loctite should hold the bolts in place and keep the water out. And we'll slip an O-ring that was missing earlier. In place. And a little dab will do ya. Was looking on the bench and saw a piece that I forgot to put in. The little screen that goes underneath. So we get to see this happen twice. Screen, the plate. That little pin in place. Spin the housing around to match the, whoops, a little bit too much on. Okay, now it's together. Okay, now comes the fun part. Sliding this back in. So this fits into the bottom of the motor. These two things have to be lifted up somewhat, because this goes, whoops, come on. This goes underneath. And that copper pipe in there is for the water. So it has to feed into the top of the water pump. Good. I have to find where that little shift lever goes, and line up that spline in the top, sort of all at the all at the same time. Sorry I can't give you a better view, but I sort of have to be able to that shift lever feels like it's in the right place. I think the water pump pipe is lined up. Now sometimes it's just a matter of turning the flywheel. And inevitably everything sort of falls back out. Try to get that. Just going to bend a piece of copper, a long chunk of copper wire here. Try to keep that out of the way. I'm not sure which has to go in first, because I don't have a manual. I don't know if I'll be able to see up there with a light. Get that fed in. Grab the copper tube. Sometimes they just pop right together, and other times they're like this. Oop. Oh. Well, you get the gist. I'm gonna shut you off, and I'll bring you back once I get this, all three things to fit at the same time, because the camera's kind of in my way. Okay, so it's together. I ended up popping the prop assembly out so I could see this, make sure this pin came in, and also that the drive shaft or prop shaft engaged in the motor head. And I just got this tarp strapped in place right now, but I wiggled it out enough to verify that the water tube is hooked up. So all that said, come on. Okay. I'm going to have to space this just a little bit. Fit that shifter pin back in. I've got the thrust bearing and the thrust washer and the bearing on. So this pin engages. Perfect. Slide the cover back on. I don't think it matters. which way. A little bit of thread lock. Put a dab more on this one. I'll get the bottom bolt in. Should be snug enough. And once that Loctite sets, we should be laughing. Okay, slip the pin back through. Come on. What do we got left? I'm thinking can put it in a bucket of water, hook up some gas, and see if it goes vroom vroom. Okay, so I set the jet to 1.5 turns. Gas valve should be open. There we go. So we got gas going through the tube. Should be in the motor. We set that a little bit. What else? Pull it. Make sure it's in neutral. Less gas. More gas. Well, that's a good sign. Except for it splooched out all the water. And you're probably trying to remind me right now that I forgot to put gear oil in it. Let me get the bucket out of the way. We'll take a minute and top up the gear oil and then do this again. We'll see how well this works. I got some synthetic Max Gear Royal Purple 7590. I think these call for 8090, so let's give it a whirl. There we go. Pop this in. It'll slow down some of the backflow. And get this one ready. Whoops. Good thing I didn't put that through my hand. Wipe it down and try it again. Okay, I got it outside, so if it splashes, it's not all over the garage. Give it another try here. A little bit of gas. Okay, so it'll run. That spring seems to catch and release even though it's in neutral. Maybe the oil needs to work around it a bit. Just want to fire it up again and see if I can get it to idle. Close. Yeah, that spring seems to catch and then release. Doesn't feel overly hot. Whoops, where did that come from? Washer fell off of something. Try the kill switch. Yeah, kill switch works. This fell off of something, I'll have to figure out where. So that bolt was out of the steering handle. And then I noticed that this little knurled threaded insert was sort of sitting up above. It's cracked here. So I just took a drill bit and spun it around to clean it out. I'm going to mix up a wee little bit of epoxy, squeeze this back in, and let it set. So I jammed a little screwdriver in the crack just to spread it open a bit. And goop it up. I put some epoxy on the bottom edge of this, so hopefully it won't fight me going in. Yeah, good. Okay, I can let that set. I don't think I got any epoxy on the inside threads. And before I put all the plastic back on and tighten everything up, I'm just waiting to hear from the owner if he wants the primer pump changed, maybe put a new spring on that sort of clutch setup or transmission setup. Yeah, I'll just wait to hear from him before I finish it off. But I think as far as trolling, you could probably put this on a boat and go fishing. Just keep an eye on things. Well, sounds like he'll be okay with it just the way it is, and if that primer pump needs to be changed, it's not a big deal. So I'm just going to pop these handles off and put the plastics back on it. From what I read, it's a good motor, which is good because you wouldn't be able to easily take, the plastic cover off as you do with other outboards to do any fixing if you're out in the middle of the water, not without a handful of tools. Probably the first thing should be the handle should go back on. And off camera, these rubbers, little seals or whatever, were loose, so I cleaned out the grooves, cleaned off the surface, and just put a bead of silicone in, taped them in place, so they're good to go. Little tricky getting everything to pop back in. Get the gas connection screwed in place. Maybe before I get too far, I'll make sure I can get this in. This has to fit into a little keyway and then somehow lock in. I think I figured out the trick. You tilt the motor and then you can get a better push down on it and it locks in. So that's good. Now we'll fit the other half of the clamshell on. See if it finds its place. Yeah, there we go. Come on. Okay, all the cases are all back on, and now I'll just put the tiller handle and the shifter. Well, the Johnson 4-horse is all back together. Everything appears to be working. Got that put back in. That one bolt that fell out, or washer and bolt that fell out, were from the tiller handle. They were loose, so everything found a place. The only thing I had left over from a little bag of nuts and bolts and washers was a little washer and a little bolt, but I can't find any place on here that looks like it's missing, so I'll put them back in the bag, and maybe he'll be able to figure out where it goes. I'll give it one final little wipe down with, spritz it with some cleaner, and then it's done and gone. Anyhow, thanks for hanging out. We'll maybe see you on the next one. Bye for now.